I moved on with grace, not revenge. You'll feel me when love stops feeling easy. I walked away before I stopped recognizing myself. You stayed the same. I evolved. I kept forgiving you until I disappeared. You were my almost, never my always. Your absence doesn't ache anymore. That's how I know I've healed. I chose silence over repeating my pain. You didn't see me, only what I gave you. I loved you fully while begging to be seen. You didn't abandon me, you abandoned the version of me who loved you. I moved on when I realized I was dating a memory. We were a dream I had to wake up from. You were loud love with quiet care. I left without screaming because peace doesn't need noise. I stopped at writing poems about someone who stopped reading them. You mistook my softness for weakness. Now you'll feel the strength of my absence. I didn't move on to forget you. I moved on to remember me. You taught me that sometimes love isn't enough. I chose closure without a conversation. You became a ghost in a story I stopped telling. I kept fighting for a love that never fought for me. You weren't a mistake. You were a mirror. Your name used to burn. Now it barely flickers. I stopped fantasizing about a future that kept hurting my present. I was never asking too much. I was asking the wrong person. You left long before I did. I waited for change that never came. I walked away the moment your presence felt like absence. You'll realize what you had when it no longer answers your call. My peace was never worth your chaos. You didn't deserve my breaking points. I left behind the version of me that tolerated almost love. You were my storm. I became my shelter. I loved you like a prayer. You treated me like background noise. I no longer flinch at your name. That's growth. You mistook my patience for permanence. I moved on the moment I chose peace over pain. Some hearts aren't meant to be fixed, just released. You'll miss me when silence starts answering back. I outgrew your version of love. You broke the heart that would have worshipped you. You were temporary. I just kept hoping you'd stay. I left when I realized I was talking to walls. Healing isn't linear, but leaving you was necessary. You were my beginning, not my ending. I deleted our memories one breath at a time. You confused comfort with love. I was never hard to love. You just never tried. I walked away with wounds you'll never understand. You made me doubt my worth. I made sure to remember it. You didn't destroy me, you freed me. I kept losing myself trying to find us. You'll search for me in others, and find only shadows. I left without hate. That's how I know it was real. I moved on when I realized I was enough. Your silence said more than your words ever did. Some goodbyes don't echo, they simply liberate. My love wasn't weak, it was just wasted. You were the chapter I had to stop rereading. I chose to move on, and that saved my soul. I loved you like oxygen, but I was suffocating. You weren't a villain, just a lesson in disguise. I stopped dancing for a love that never clapped for me. You were the storm I kept calling home. I didn't want better. I became better. Your indifference carved silence into my soul. I moved on without slamming the door, but I locked it. You mistook my loyalty for weakness. I chose myself in a world where I always chose you. You lost someone who saw the divine in your flaws. I was the light. You just couldn't stop blinking. I stopped explaining my worth when you kept forgetting it. My goodbye was soft but final. You'll find echoes of me in every kind soul you meet. You weren't the only one grieving. We just grieved differently. I gave you love. You gave me lessons. You weren't bad. You just weren't brave. I stopped asking for effort you refused to give. I outgrew the pain you kept me in. You'll realize my silence held more love than your words. I moved on when it stopped feeling like love and started feeling like loss. You didn't see me breaking, just me staying. You loved me loudly in public, but hurt me silently in private. I begged the universe for signs. It gave me red flags. You drained me gently. I stopped chasing when I realized love shouldn't run. You thought I'd always stay. I thought you'd always change. We didn't end. We evaporated. I left because you kept leaving emotionally. You kept saying you loved me. I just stopped believing. I realized I was never your home, just your hiding place. You weren't ready for the kind of love I offered. I was your sanctuary. You were my test. I moved on when the hurt became familiar. Your love had too many rules. My heart needed freedom. You taught me how to love without receiving it. You won't know what you lost until someone loves you like I did. I stopped asking for the bare minimum. You romanticized me, then resented me. I left with love, not hate. That's how I know I'm free. My dear, I didn't move on because I stopped loving you. I moved on because I started loving myself. I didn't leave to hurt you. I left to stop hurting. Some goodbyes aren't meant to be loud. They just echo forever. I didn't walk away. I finally listened to what your silence was screaming. You weren't replaced. You were released. I begged the stars to erase you, and they wept as they did. I stopped checking my phone. That's when I knew it was real. Missing you was my addiction. Moving on became my healing. I didn't want a new person. I just wanted a new peace. I chose peace over passion, silence over screaming, healing over hoping. I had to leave the story to save my soul. Even angels walk away when love becomes a battlefield. I loved you loud, but I healed in whispers. I miss who I thought you were, not who you became. It didn't end, it just unraveled. I didn't move on overnight. I moved on every time I wiped a tear alone. Letting go didn't kill me. Holding on almost did. I walked away while still in love. That's how broken I was. You didn't lose me, you let me go. I left the table when love became starvation. I stopped calling it love the moment it stopped feeling safe. Healing isn't forgetting you, it's remembering you without breaking. I chose loneliness over disrespect. That's growth. I moved on when I realized I was the only one trying. Love shouldn't make you question your worth. You weren't replaced. My peace just became louder. You became a lesson I didn't ask for, but desperately needed. I had to unlove you just to find myself again. The day I stopped hoping, I finally started healing. I didn't fall out of love. I rose into clarity. You didn't break me. You revealed where I was already cracked. I left quietly, but my absence will be loud. Moving on isn't revenge, it's resurrection. My heart still whispers your name, but my soul has stopped answering. I didn't stop loving you. I just stopped bleeding for you. The closure I wanted became the strength I needed. I let go because love shouldn't feel like survival. You were home until you weren't. I moved on, not to forget you, but to remember me. Loving you almost cost me myself. Almost. I kept choosing you until I realized you never chose me. I didn't stop caring. I stopped begging. You were the storm. I became the sky. I left the fire because I deserved warmth, not burns. I moved on without hating you. That's how I know I've healed. Our story didn't end. It transformed. You didn't love me wrong. You just didn't know how to love. I left when staying started killing my spirit. I grew out of the version of me who tolerated you. You lost someone who would have walked through hell barefoot for you. I finally realized your silence was louder than any goodbye. I left when your presence became lonelier than your absence. I moved on the moment my tears felt repetitive. The love was real. The timing was tragic. I set boundaries. You called it betrayal. I moved on not because I stopped loving, but because I started understanding. I didn't want to go. I needed to. You love the version of me that didn't love herself. I stayed long enough to lose parts of myself. I forgave you, but I walked away to keep forgiving me. I deleted our texts, not the memories. You were a prayer, then a lesson, now a past. I outgrew the version of love you offered. The moment I chose me, I lost you. You won't understand why I left. Until you feel what I felt. I left with love in my heart and scars on my soul. Our chapter ended, but I'm still healing from the punctuation. I moved on in silence. That was my loudest scream. I'm not bitter, I'm just finally free. The version of me that loved you, she no longer exists. I had to lose you to return to myself. You called it quitting, I call it survival. I walked away holding pieces you never noticed were missing. I stayed until staying meant erasing myself. I moved on, not because it hurt, but because I deserved better. I left without closure because you were the closure. Love should not feel like negotiating your worth. My silence after you was louder than any argument. I still care, I just care from a distance. You won't feel my absence until your heart whispers my name and I don't answer. I kept watering love that had no roots. Leaving you was painful, but losing me would have been worse. I moved on when I realized I deserved presence, not patterns. You were a poem I read too many times. I stopped explaining my worth the moment I left. Some people don't deserve closure, just distance. I chose to be free, even if it meant being alone. I unlearned you to remember me. I stayed until I forgot how to breathe. I moved on with tears, not triumph. You were never mine, just a borrowed moment. I stopped waiting. The wait was making me forget my value. I walked away not to teach you a lesson, but to finally learn mine. I loved you beyond reason. I left you for survival.